Well, good morning and welcome to the Being Your Own CEO Success Circle. This is a support especially for solopreneurs. And this morning we're going to look at a book review, and our friend Fred Jones is going to walk us through a review of Meetings Suck. So, since we are only four this morning, we are missing one of our favorite people. Alana has had to withdraw for a little while to participate in a course that she's studying. She'll be back sometime soon, but right now she's doing her coursework. So let's see, David, you were here first. So how would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay. First things first. We are on YouTube. I'm only seeing half the screen. We're all four of us are showing, but it's only half the screen being present.
Where?
Um,
Oh, that's because I need to show full screen. Now you'll see the whole screen.
okay. I'll wait a second or two for the delay. I'm Dave Flannery. I'm with Affordable Websites for Small Businesses. I make websites um, small businesses and help them build their web presence.
Uh-huh.
Um, I'm in Rock Falls, Illinois, where we had snow yesterday.
Oh no,
Didn't
already?
Yep, didn't accumulate, but we came down for about 15 minutes very hard, and
Wow.
about 90 miles west of us, they had 6 to 7 inches. So
It's only October.
I know.
And while I still have you there, I'm looking at um, the YouTube chat, and I see that Javita is out there, and Shy Guy is there. That is Bill. Welcome here, Bill. You could come in if you feel like it. So nice to see you online again, Bill. Okay, Fred, I'll leave you last so that you can introduce yourself and then maybe just roll into your presentation. So, Vivek, what's going on with you this uh, today?
Namaste. My name is Vivekanand. I am proud to share my belief with Steve Jobs and Leonardo da Vinci, who said simplicity is the ultimate in sophistication. I aim to bring time tested wisdom and happiness together into your business and life by unifying, simplifying, and amplifying simple technology and tools. Wake Technology is my company. Together, let us wake up our potential. So that's my elevator pitch. Uh, Answer to your question, Lawalan, it's been rainy. I've been quite busy at my work and getting involved with quite a few other things, initiatives from Isha Foundation.
Wow.
So that keeps me even more busy. So
Whoever said working from home and that there's nothing to do?
yeah.
So I see Bill is saying thanks, maybe next week. Miss chatting with you folks. So we look forward to that, Bill. So I might just say I'm in Victoria, BC, and it's kind of gray and fall/winter like here, but and I'm busy again. The same goes for me. I will be going into the care center 3 days this week while somebody is off on vacation. So I'm in the same boat. But anyway, I do want to just bring everybody up to date with our project that Vivek and I are working on. We have created a website. It's not live yet, but we are working on it. It's called Website for Courses. And we have the course that you folks asked us to develop roughly half finished. So as we walk our way through all of this, um, we discover, oh, there's something else. We have to figure out how to do this collaboratively and where to put that, etc. So you know what? When we're all done, I'm going to create a course on how to work with a partner. So it's been, and I mean, it's what a fabulous experience though, with Vivek way over in the UK and me in Canada, and we can get together online and work on projects together. So I mean, it's just fascinating. Anyway, that's enough about me. So Fred, how would you like to introduce yourself? And then maybe if you wish, you can just kind of go into your book review.
Yes, thanks, Lowell. And I'm Fred Jones, the creator of Our Future Leaders, where I assist young people to gain communication and leadership skills so they can become the leaders that our world needs, especially with the many changes that are happening. I'm currently in Victoria area, not too far from where Lowell Ann is located. And I've been very busy with Agri Speakers International. When I went to Portugal last year, I met some wonderful people, and it seems to be accelerating. I'm working on some videos for meeting roles, and the creator of Agri Speakers International has looked at them and said, yeah, continue, because a fellow in Africa was saying that would help. So that's my latest project, is doing some videos on how to be a part of a meeting. And talking about meetings, that's what so that'll lead me into the book that I want to review, which is called Meetings Suck. And I'm going to share my screen and just get my notes up. And as it says, at some time, all of us will be running a meeting. And the reason I feel this is important is in the book, Meetings Suck, there are some elements that I think fit into almost every meeting. It's something to consider when you're running a meeting. And that's why I find this book very helpful. So what is a meeting? Well, Captain James T. Kirk of Star Trek stated, a meeting is an event where minutes are taken and hours are wasted. Now that reminds me of when I was leading a brainstorming session in, believe it or not, January of this year in Australia. That seems so far away now with COVID-19. But I was at a large bank called ANZ Bank. I believe it stands for Australia New Zealand Bank, one of the large banks there. And I was leading this brainstorming session, and I asked them, what are some of the issues you'd like to brainstorm? And they said, oh, well, we're overworked and we're busy people. We don't have enough people. And they had about 4 or 5 things that they said, issues they'd like to brainstorm on. So then I asked them to vote which is the most popular item that they'd like to brainstorm today. And it was too many meetings. And that, that was the challenge they're facing. Excuse me. I just had a drink of water here. And that was when I thought, well, that reminds me of one of my favorite books, which is Meetings Suck by Cameron Herald. He's a fellow Canadian. He was involved with the growth of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, built it from a small company to was up over $100 million. And one of the techniques that he discovered there was how to hold appropriate meetings that are effective. So if you look at the bottom of it, it says turning one of the most loathed elements of business, which is meetings, into one of the most valuable. And so those techniques that he suggests in this is something that whenever we are hosting a meeting, we should consider, are there any of these elements that would make my meeting more effective? And that's what I'd like to run through with you today. Some of the items in this book that will help any of us who are hosting a meeting. Sort of like a checklist. Do I need this? And for this meeting, will it help me? And I found the book to be very helpful. And I've been in Toastmasters for many years where we run meetings, and some of the elements are similar, but I think this book takes it a little bit further than that. So one of the items out of the book that is useful is, what is the purpose of the meeting that we are hosting? And he says there's 3 types. The first is information sharing, where maybe you have a weekly update, or you have new ideas you want to share, or maybe giving feedback on something. So that is the information sharing. It's only one way. It's not a discussion with anyone, but it's a one-way meeting. Somebody getting up there, similar to what I'm doing now. I'm doing the talking, and we don't have any discussion at the moment. The second type of meeting is creative discussion. This is where you're embracing possibilities. It's like the brainstorming session that I conducted in Australia, where we were discussing, oh, what can we do about all the meetings we're having? And they had lots of good ideas. And the third one is consensus decision. This is where you're making a decision. Now, it doesn't mean the meeting only has one purpose. Sometimes it could have 2 of those purposes. You might have a creative discussion and consensus decision. But what's really important is you must share with everyone who's going to attend what is the purpose of the meeting before they come. Because otherwise, they can come and say, oh, this is just an information sharing meeting. They're not prepared to make decisions. They haven't really thought of anything, and they're not prepared. So that can be a big time waster if they're not aware of what the purpose of the meeting is. So that's one element that's important. What is the purpose? What type of meeting is this going to be conducted? And the other thing to think about is the type of attendees. Now, as Cameron Herald said, and a lot of other people, you have different personality types. You have the dominant, the expressive, the analytical, and the amicable. And the dominant and the expressive can often take over a meeting. I'm sure we've been on a meeting where somebody gets up and starts talking and no one else has a chance. So everybody, the analytical and the amicable, are sitting there. They might have something very valuable to add, but they don't have an opportunity. So how do you control that in your meetings? What techniques can you use? And so these are the 5 strategies to run a successful meeting. You must have a technique of engaging the introverts. What can you do about that? How do you do that? And ask the junior members and the quiet types to speak first, and then move on to the more talkative. Don't let the more talkative and the senior staff to start. This reminds me of a time when I, at Toastmasters, was involved in some training. I think I was training the club secretaries, those who take notes and minutes of meetings that you might have, the executive meetings. And so we have this club officer training. And my task was to train the secretaries. And so I had a group of about 8 to 10 people. And I know some of them. They've been in Toastmasters for 20 years. They've been secretary forever, and they know everything, and they will tell you everything. And the poor new member who's just joined and is going to try and find something doesn't have a chance. So that what I did in that case was I asked everyone, how long have you been in Toastmasters? How long have you been a secretary? And I then lined them up around the table, those who were the most junior first, until sitting next to me were the most senior. And I started by asking the most junior what they wanted to know, and the discussion evolved. And we looked at some of their problems that they have, what they'd like to get out of this meeting. And by the time we got to the senior people, I only had half an hour. 90% of what the senior people would have said has already been covered. And everyone felt involved and had something to add to the meeting. That worked well. One of the best training I've ever been involved with, because we started with the junior people who had a lot of questions and they wanted to know. That's why they came. Rather than someone saying, oh, this is how I've done it for the last 10 years and I know this, and it just overwhelms them. So that was a technique that, and I got that out of this book. Meetings suck. The other thing is maximizing time. Meetings start on time. In fact, you try and insist on people starting 5 minutes before starting time and ending even 5 minutes before it was scheduled to, for a lot of reasons that he puts in the book and I won't go into. But that reminds me of when I worked on the gold mines in South Africa. There was a general manager. We had a meeting every Wednesday. And that started exactly at 1 o'clock to the dot. And if you weren't there and you walked in 10 seconds late, you felt that high because the general manager would stare at you. You're late. Didn't say it. He just looked at you and you knew. And the funniest story that happened that time was we had visitors come to the mine once in a while to visit, go underground, and we'd take them to lunch. And of course, the general manager was at lunch that day and the meeting was on that day. And I sat there waiting for him to go to the meeting. And he got up at 1 o'clock and I said, he's going to be late. How can he be late? And he drove his car very slowly to the main office where the meeting was. And he continued past. He had organized his second in charge to run the meeting. So I walked in late because I followed him. I learned my lesson then. I think he was laughing all the way in his rearview mirror as he saw me behind him, knowing he's really caught me with that one. But those meetings started on time and ended on time. So that's something I learned. But the other thing about maximizing that Cameron Herald said is, you also think about, sometimes we always have a 1 hour meeting. Do we have to be a 1 hour meeting? We could probably do it in half an hour. Those 2 hour meetings could probably be done in 1 hour if we really organize it and have the time. And the other thing is, only essential employees participate, because if they have nothing to add, why should they come? Oh, they always come, it's tradition. But they sit there and they've got nothing to add. It's not even part of their mandate. And the fourth thing he has is people can learn not only to opt out, but opt out part of the meeting. They might have 4 items on the agenda and the agenda has been showing them. They're only there for 1 or 2 of them. And they come in because they know the time. They come into the meeting maybe at that point in time, contribute, and then leave. So why have them sit for a whole hour when they only need to be there for 10 or 20 minutes? Those are the type of things that he says can make it. And then your team comes prepared because they know what the meeting's purpose is. So I'll give you an example of an agenda that's out of the book. I've put it over 2 pages. It's very short, actually, if you look at it overall. But the agenda is sent out prior to the meeting. And having an agenda is a key element. And you send it out before, because this is an example from the book. And it lists at the beginning, obviously, where it is and the time and what it's about, and 3 outcomes that are expected from the meeting so that they can prepare. Say, oh, those are the 3 things. You know, we're going to finalize the roles of the agenda. We're going to discuss hiring an outside person for the facilitator. And then on the rest of it, it shows, you know, how many minutes are allocated to each of those. 10 minutes for this, 20 minutes for that. So you know during the meeting when you can arrive, if you only part of that, part of the meeting where you can add to it. And one thing suggested is a possibility. It's not a necessary, but he says, if there's any preparation, you might want to put on the to-do list what they might have to prepare, maybe review some documents or look at something, or or think about something before the meeting. So you could put that on your agenda. So it's a relatively simple agenda, but it goes out beforehand so people know, should I come and what should I prepare? And what's the purpose of this meeting? So that's a key element. Every meeting needs an agenda. And then you need certain roles in the meeting. We have roles in Toastmasters, and I mentioned that earlier that I have to do videos of her different roles. Well, these are the roles that Cameron Herald suggests. They're not the same as Toastmasters roles, but there is similarities. You need a moderator. That's the person who keeps the meeting on the agenda and on time. You need a parking lot. This is a person who makes notes of good ideas and says, oh, that's not really relevant to our discussion, our meeting today. And they make notes of it and say, look, we'll address that elsewhere at either another meeting, or maybe we'll send out just an email about answering those questions. A timekeeper, that's very relevant. That's something that we have always in Toastmasters meetings. And that's a person who just doesn't sit there and say, oh, it's an hour now. He says, oh, the 10 minutes, we're getting close to our 10 minutes for that aspect. But we have to wind it up because we've got other items. That is key, because we do sometimes go off on tangents and missing time. So you have a timekeeper. And then, of course, the participants, they're the ones, but they should be prepared to contribute. And last but not least, the closer. It could be the moderator, or it could be a person making notes. And the key to this is a very important element that he brings up. It summarizes what was covered, reviews any commitments and deadlines to avoid misunderstanding. Sometimes somebody says, oh, I will be doing this. I said, no, we didn't expect you to do that. And it can save people time. They thought they had to prepare something, but it said, no, it was just a discussion. It would be nice, but so that closer is important, because it then really ties up what did we accomplish and what are the expectations from this. So those are the 5 roles that should be covered. Now, there's a lot of types of meetings he goes through. Now, we're talking about solopreneurs, and we probably don't have 90% of these meetings, but it goes from the annual review and planning meeting. And one thing that I really liked about what he suggests there, and I'll just share it because I don't think that's relevant to many of these solopreneurs, but if you have a meeting, often people say, oh, we're going to go on outward bound courses, or we're going to hike up and do team building so we get to know each other. I like his suggestion better. He said, rather than do that, rent an Airbnb accommodation for enough people, like maybe a large house and so on. And the one tactic that he suggests that really resonates with me is give them a food budget. They shop for supplies, and then you divvy up the cooking. Who's going to cook breakfast? Who's going to cook lunch? Who's going to cook dinner? And get them to do that rather than hike up the mountain or do outward bound. The bonding that happens when people cook and eat together and they prepared it themselves is so much better than any other bonding. Mm-hmm. I love that suggestion. It's similar to when I go on a boat cruise with my Scout friends. We take turns of cooking for each other, and that's I guess why it resonates with me, because we really get excited about what we're going to cook for each other and how it goes in the comments. So it is a fantastic suggestion, although it might not be relevant to solopreneurs, but it could be a way you do your family gatherings. Why should one person do all the cooking? Why not have everybody contribute? I think it helps bond items. And of course, he also mentions video conferencing. Even the virtual meetings, you need those items. So just review successful meetings. How do you engage the introverts? How do you maximize the time? How do you have only, people who should be there are there? You don't have just everybody just because we traditionally do it. People should be able to opt out, say, I have nothing to contribute, or they just come to part of the meeting. And because the people know the purpose of the meeting, that they come prepared. And that is why I think the book Meeting Sucks, which helps you turn meetings from one of the most loathed elements of business into one of the most valuable. And he's actually got some videos of some of the meetings they hold, and it's really wonderful to see how they conduct those meetings. So with that, I would say Meeting Suck is one of the best books I've got. I have it on Kindle and I often refer to it. So I really enjoy what Cameron Herald has done. So that's the topic of Meeting Suck.
I really,
Back to you, Lolan.
well, thank you, Fred.
You're muted.
And oh yes.
You're muted.
Yes, I was muted because somebody was running a lawnmower out front here. So, yeah. So, thank you very much, Fred. There were a lot of things that you covered there that really resonated for me. And that first slide with that horrible board table at the very beginning just brought back a humongous number of memories for me. So what about you, David and Vivek? Did you ever sort of find yourself around one of those tables?
Oh yeah, I spent a lot of time around those tables. We used to have to do engineering proposals around those tables, and you know, we had I remember one that was, it turned out to be very good, but I had to explain to people that had been building power steering pumps for years that there were 3 different styles of power steering pumps, even though they looked exactly the same. And I had to show them that the insides were different and that we needed to separate them and put in new applications so that the small cars didn't get the big cars pumps and the big cars didn't get the small car pump, because you overheat when it's small, and you've got the large, you overheat the oil and it ruins the pump. When it's the large car and you got the small pump, you don't get enough oil to the piston to be able to turn the car smoothly. So, and we were having major problems with warranties, and that was one of the reasons. So it was, that's.
So that would have been an educational session.
Yes, and a decision-making one too, because we had to decide whether we were going to split them up or not. So it was real interesting. I did get these people that chew tobacco and to change their minds about it. It was successful, but that was a long time ago, and we used to have meetings all the time.
Right.
Oh man.
Yeah. And what about you, Vivek? Did you ever end up around the big board table too?
I did. As a matter of fact, I also had to, this was long time ago, at least 10, 15 years ago, I think. Had to conduct meetings myself. So have been on both sides of the table, as it were. So yeah, it did. One, I did relate quite easily with the point that you make, Fred, that make the quietest person speak first. The person who, or the most junior and probably the quietest person speak first, and then don't let the senior person to take over the entire thing. And the funny part is that the senior most person could be you.
Right.
That makes it hard. You have to shut up first and let. Sometimes it's very difficult, but you have to.
I was the junior person when I did that.
Wow.
I'd actually just taken over the product line like 3 months earlier, and
Mm,
it was the first product line I'd ever had by myself, and so it was quite. Um, he doesn't know anything.
Right, right.
A lot of that
mm,
going on before that.
Well, so you both are referring to what I call hierarchical organizations, and I worked in one as well in government way back when, and it was always the big boss that sat at the end of the table and ran the meeting and just told everybody, it was his microphone, and he was going to run the thing. But the interesting thing that happened where I worked was at one stage of the game, somebody in the organization realized that this hierarchical thing is not going to work anymore.
mm, mm,
And so I got selected to participate in introducing team-based management in our region. And so looking at the roles that Fred talked about, um, what we did was I trained all these different teams. I trained them to run the meetings themselves,
mm,
and some of them were very reluctant and hesitant. But once they realized how supportive their coworkers would be, they really jumped in and really did things. And um, so they learned, and so what we used rather than a meeting style, we used a facilitation style, which is slightly different.
mm,
Uh, and I facilitated many meetings myself, and the one person that maybe on your team that is not performing exactly the way you would like them to do, I discovered that if you invite that person to give a presentation on something,
mm,
that person will go and do it and suddenly go, whoa. I still know somebody, a junior person that was on my team at the time, and she still talks about that. She's now moved on and done extremely well. But instead of, doing an evaluation and doing all of that, I invited her to give a presentation, and she really did a good job. She had it in her. So, I mean, that whole hierarchical thing about the boss being the one that runs the meeting, that stuff is really outdated now, I think. I wonder if there are still organizations around that run things that way. But another item that resonated for me was especially that whole piece about being clear about your purpose. Knowing what the purpose is and stating it up front so people know what should happen. So yeah, I mean
Uh, I think the major trick is major challenge is agenda,
mhm,
sticking to the agenda, and then
mhm,
um, the other aspect is some of the people who would attend the meeting come to the meeting with an agenda of their own, and that you have to handle it well, otherwise
mhm.
you'll
Yes,
have a lot of problems.
yes.
People with hidden agenda.
Yes, yes.
I don't know. I was always able to. We switched from a standard manufacturing to what was called lean manufacturing,
Mhm,
and it required one of the things that made it successful was you were required to get your employees that were team members of a certain process to come together and have meetings and decide how they were going to do stuff.
Mhm.
And at first it was very difficult for me to get people to do that, but I succeeded in
Mhm.
letting them run the meeting. I was there to make sure the meeting got ran and that things were working, but I let them run the meeting and I let them come up with their ideas, and I reined them in so they wouldn't get too far upfield. Couldn't spend $1 million to fix the problem, and you know what I mean. We have to be realistic, and was quite successful.
Yeah, that's that
Doing
old
that.
process improvement thing.
Yeah,
I remember that too.
yeah, and we were quite successful, and
Yeah.
we did a lot of things that
Mhm.
changed things that way. We went from when I first got there doing building pieces to building. We switched to building hoses, which meant an assembly, and you would start by cutting the tube, and then you would cut the other end of the tube, and then you would cut the hose, and they all went through the process together, and it was unbelievable. We changed, the quantity that was being made
Yeah.
from requiring 3 shifts 7 days a week, and we doubled the production, and we were at 2 shifts
Yeah.
5 days a week with no overtime, just by changing that
Yeah.
process of how you think about things. And it was amazing, because there were times that I didn't think that stuff would work, but you're being told that it's going to work. So I gave it my best to try to make it work. And there were other people that didn't believe in it, and they made it not work, which is.
Yeah, well, there are always there's always going to be a few people around that resist a different way or a new way of doing
Yeah,
things. Yeah,
there always is.
yeah.
And
So, speaking about kids staying within time, we don't have a timer here. Maybe we should. So, we are just a few minutes over. So, yeah, I think that um, probably the most important thing that Fred said was making sure that there is, what the purpose is, and that the desired outcomes. If people know what to expect, then they'll come in organized. And then I really like the fact that Fred was bringing in the fact that participation, trying to encourage, make sure everybody participates according to what is appropriate or what they know or how they want to. So yeah.
There also, I mean, there also could be cultural issues. I read, I had read this long ago, but in management studies, that most of the meetings, most of the French attend meetings to be told what to do. That's their way of meetings. The Japanese, everyone is involved. Everyone knows everything. It's not that only the boss knows and the boss shares information on the need to know basis. This need to know basis is an American thing. The
Yes.
Japanese is everyone knows what exactly needs to be done, and they still have a hierarchy. They still have all that. Their hierarchy is by consent. The lowest in the hierarchy will obey the highest in the hierarchy because he wants to obey that person, not because that is a hierarchy. No. So So yeah, the cultural aspects can make a lot of difference. So
Well,
and
you're going that according to countries, but really if you think about it, every organization has its own culture.
That too, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to bring into, I mean, since we are doing things online,
Hmm.
virtually, and um, with people who are not necessarily in the same, even not necessarily in the same continent as you.
Hmm.
So these cultural differences, these things have to be addressed. So especially in an online setting, these have to be addressed. If you don't, then you will not succeed.
Hmm.
That's
Well, so I agree with you. I mean, my goodness, how there's so many different ways and approaches to doing things, which is why setting your ground rules and having all those kinds of conversations ahead of time. But one last thing that I really wanted to emphasize that Fred brought out was the consensus.
Mm.
So when decisions are made by consensus, then there's going to be so much more buy-in than just the hierarchical boss saying this is the way you're going to do it. So consensus is and to bring about consensus in a group takes a lot of practice and a lot of knowledge. So yeah. So thank you so much, Fred. I really appreciate that you did a nice presentation for us. And thank you for participating, Dave and Vivek, and out there, Bill and Javita. So I think it's time for us to close the video now. And I shall do that with the reminder that it's important to do what you love with passion. And to say that next week we're going to have a conversation about building community. So thanks again. And I shall make my outro go.